to introduce our speaker for today, Reverend Billie Martini. Most of you know her by now because she helps us out quite often, and we just love having her here. Her title for today is Shake It Up and Step Up, Living Beyond Easter. So that sounds like a very exciting talk. Um, Reverend Billie was a Unity minister for 17 years down in first, it wasn't Phoenix, it was Surprise. And then she retired a couple of years ago, I think it is now. So we are just very fortunate to be able to hear her occasionally. Welcome, Billie.
Oh, I could unmute myself. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Jeanette. It's good to be with you all. I was scheduled to be there in person. They were going to try both the Zoom and in person. And then Jeanette called me last night and said, if you want to stay home, you can do it at home because it wasn't going to work out or whatever. And then she told me that I wouldn't have been able to see you all that are on Zoom if I was there in person. So I thought, oh, well, this is probably better then. I get to see your faces. So before I start my talk, I'm glad to be here. My friend Debbie is on. I want Debbie to raise your hand, wave or something, Debbie. Yeah, right there, she's waving. I'm going to read a poem at the end of the lesson that she wrote for Easter, and I think you'll enjoy it as much as I did. So I wanted you to know who she was. So when you hear it, you can put a face to these beautiful words that she wrote. So you ready to get started? You all good today? All ready? All right. All right. So I have a great story for you, a very great story. It's a story of a farmer whose old donkey fell into a dried up well. Now, I know some of you might have heard this before because I think I've told it before, but I like it. So I'm going to tell it again. So this old donkey fell into a well, but it was a dried up one. So it was just a big hole. And the farmer heard the old donkey braying, or whatever donkeys do when they fall into wells. And he didn't know what to do. He was just kind of beside himself. So he calls some of his neighbors over and he asked them for help. And none of them really seemed to know, even though they brainstormed, they couldn't think of a solution. So they just couldn't come up with anything to get that donkey out of there. But this little boy suggested that they haul some dirt and throw it into the well. And that didn't go over very well, as you can well imagine. Everyone got a little hysterical, thinking that the poor old donkey would be buried alive. So that boy was very consistent, and persistent. He convinced everyone that this plan would work. And so they thought, oh, what the heck, it's worth a try. So the boy leaned over the well's opening and he shouted down at the donkey, "Don't worry, Rebecca, we're going to get you out." And then the farmer and his neighbors shoveled dirt down in the well. And as the dirt hit the donkey's back, she decided that every time a shovel hit her back or the load of dirt landed on her back, she would simply shake it off and step up. And when she had enough of that dirt under her, then she'd really be able to step up. And so that's what she did. So after every shovelful, she'd shake it off. You can't see the shaking too well. I do it better standing up. And then she would step up and shake it off and step up. And she repeated this to herself in donkey talk, of course. She kept saying that to herself, I'm going to shake it off and step up. So no matter how painful the blows or how distressing the situation seemed, she just kept on. And as you can imagine, that old mule must have fought panic and pain, but she just kept on, shaking it off and stepping up. And before long, the donkey, battered and exhausted, stepped triumphantly over the wall of the well. What seemed like a grave turned out to be a joyous experience. What seemed like a grave out to be a great overcoming. And isn't that what we celebrated last week on Easter Sunday? Isn't that what we did? You can nod. I can see you. Okay. Isn't that what we celebrated? And aren't we still celebrating that today, this Sunday after Easter? Aren't we still celebrating life? Life that has fewer restrictions now that we are getting vaccinated, that we're able to hug once in a while. Life at times has left us battered and exhausted. Just think 2020. But isn't it time that we celebrate all those times that we fought panic and pain and despair? Those times that we kept on shaking it off and stepping up. That all of our experiences leading up to this day, this moment, this Sunday after Easter have been a blessing in some ways. Yes? Yes? Yes. So today, since we've shaken it off and stepped up, we celebrate our awakened hearts and our risen souls. We celebrate that we've shaken off things that no longer serve us, that we've stepped up in consciousness. And today we celebrate the Christ consciousness in each one of us, the brilliant light that shines for all to see. Gosh, it's even saying Christ consciousness, I think, brings a smile because it's so beautiful. And, or maybe even gives us a little scare, or at least a little nudge in what it means in terms of how we live our lives beyond Easter, how we show up each day. So Christ consciousness. I want you just to say that softly to yourself. Christ consciousness. Okay. Let's say it together now, even though we're muted. Just say it together. Christ consciousness. Okay. Now let's look at what it means. First of all, we have to look at the word consciousness. I define and believe that consciousness is all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, our beliefs, our attitudes, our values, our words, and our actions, kind of all mixed up together. So Christ consciousness then is the consciousness, the thoughts, the feelings, the beliefs, the attitudes, the values, the words and actions of the person whose heart is awakened to wholeness, to holiness. One who knows their special, unique gifts and their perfect divinity. Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the person whose soul, whose life energy has risen above the experiences of the outer world, who has shaken off the outer world and stepped up into the realm of higher understanding. Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the person who knows, really, truly knows who and whose they are. Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the one who soars into the infinite possibilities of what it means to be a God being here on earth. Does that sound pretty good? Mhm. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But in terms of actually having Christ consciousness alive and awake in us, it also sounds like a huge responsibility. And some questions come up like, well, what does that really mean for me? How do we do that? How can we live the Christ consciousness? So I have some really good news for you this morning. That Christ consciousness is already there. And the moment we choose to acknowledge it, the moment we make a decision that's how we want to live our lives, the moment we shake off anything unchrist-like, the moment we awaken to the love that we are, is the moment that we step up, that we rise up and unlock the Christ potential within us. See, it's always been there. It's always been there. We only have to awaken to it and arise in it. And that decision that we make, that choice, that determination unlocks it. And some other good news is, and I really, really want us all to hear this morning, is that it doesn't matter where you are in your life right now, this moment, what your current condition or your situation is, nor does it matter where you've been in your life in the past. Doesn't matter what you've done or not done. None of that matters, because at any moment we can decide to step up, shake off anything that isn't Christ-like, step up, arise. Okay, so we're going to do some affirming, and you just have to hear yourself do it. Okay. First is, I decide to wake up. Ready? I decide to wake up. Shake off anything that isn't Christ-like. I want the shoulders going. Shake up anything that isn't Christ-like. Okay. Step up, rise up. All right. And now say yes. Yes. Okay. We can awaken and arise because that's what Jesus so beautifully showed us. He showed us how to resurrect. He showed us that the power of life is stronger than anything else. He showed us that life is for living, not dying. That life is lived from within out. And that there is a great depth to this life within us. And he showed us that this power for life is everywhere. So think about it. He invited us to see the resurrection with a perception that gives great meaning to life. He invited us to see that without the resurrection, that with every sorrow or discouragement or despair, anything that seemed less than good to us, our faith and our hope would be lost, never to return. But none of those losses occurred because of the resurrection. It didn't happen. See, Jesus demonstrated this principle of resurrection on Easter morning, and we can demonstrate it in big ways, in huge ways, when we, despite what has occurred in our lives up to this moment, despite our circumstances or the conditions surrounding us at this current time, we can demonstrate Christ consciousness. When we make the decision, when we make the choice, make the determination to awaken our hearts to love and to arise into our highest potential in this life. And as we each individually and collectively take the Easter journey past Easter, when we consciously shake off things that are not Christ-like and step up in consciousness, then amazing possibilities for living as and expressing our authentic selves occur. And new and exciting possibilities emerge for our lives. Unity minister and author Eric Butterworth wrote in his book, Discover the Power Within You. He wrote, Easter is not a passport to another world. It is a quality of perception for this one. It is not just a day when we recall how Jesus rose from the dead. It is a time to take a new look at ourselves and contemplate the divinity within us, in us, the depths of our own. It is time to take a new look at ourselves and contemplate the divinity in us, the depths of our own innate God potential. It is time to reappraise the principle that makes all overcoming possible. So we get to choose. We get to decide. And once we make the decision to live in an awakened, risen place of, in the risen, awakened place of Christ consciousness, once we take a good look at our spiritual selves, once we own our divinity, once we start believing that truly that with God, all things are possible, once we remind ourselves and believe moment by moment in our God potential, overcoming takes place. But the key is to make the decision, to make the decision, to make that choice, to lock into that determination. And then the potential within us is unlocked, and the doors of life, of heaven on earth, are wide open. Our brother Jesus was on the road of overcoming right up to the very end, which Eric Butterworth reminds us was a new beginning. Jesus said, follow me, come after me. He was talking to us as a big brother who knew that he was not only pursuing his goal, but he was making a path, a trail for us to follow. It said in John 14:3, that where I am, there you may be also. He's saying, follow me into a greater awareness of the truth by which you can see and demonstrate higher and greater things. That's very exciting. The Easter celebrations are all over for this year, but the resurrection is still calling us to rise above the experience of any condition. And the resurrection is still calling us to awaken fully to our divinity, to arise and stand tall and strong in our own truth, our own unique and perfect divinity, the divinity that is eternal, ageless, deathless, whole, and complete. The resurrection is asking us to know that we are perfect even when we seem to be imperfect, even when we are fearful or unclear of the future, undecisive, frustrated. The resurrection is calling us to remind ourselves, as Paul did, awaken, O sleeper, and rise from the dead, and Christ shall give you light. Ephesians 5:14. The resurrection is inviting each of us to awaken and arise to our Christ consciousness, to shake off whatever needs to be released, what no longer serves us, and to step up fully, to arise and awaken into Christ consciousness. So, are you willing? You want to say yes with me? Yes. Yes. Okay. So, will you pray with me now? Dear risen Christ within, the Easter journey is enlightening, transforming, and transforming us. And going beyond Easter now, we open to the infinite possibilities of what it means to be a God being here on earth. We shake it off. We wash away anything unchristlike, fears and doubts, resentments, lack, limitation, and we stand up, resurrected, awakened, and risen in consciousness. We give thanks for this consciousness awakened and risen in us, for a greater awareness of who we are and whose we are. We are grateful, risen and awakened spiritual beings, triumphant, glorious, splendid, and radiant, shining brightly for all the world to see. And with your eyes still closed and in this prayerful place, I'm going to read you the beautiful poem now by my friend Deb. It's entitled, I Rise Up. I rise up and move into the sun, removing my cloak of darkness, embracing this new awakening. I rise up and I look to the heavens with eyes open wide. I see the glory of spirit as it renews my world. I rise up and move into the new. The past is gone, the future awakes. I dance to the rhythms of a joyous heart. I rise up. My time has come to sparkle. My transformation is completed. I am one with the living Christ Spirit. And so it is. Amen and amen.
That's very good.
Thank you, Reverend Billie. That was beautiful.